Our paper is about looking at how people's problematic news consumption habits might relate to both their mental and their physical health. To explore this, we used a survey with 1,100 US adults and kind of asked them questions about their news consumption habits, as well as general stress and anxiety for the mental aspect. And for health, we asked them kind of how recently in the last month they've had things like sore backs, digestive issues, headaches, exhaustion. And so we tried to see kind of for the problematic news consumption, we were interested in how absorbed people got in the news, if they had a tendency to get deeply drawn into the news, really emotionally and kind of mentally involved, if their habits were compulsive, meaning they were just doing it all the time, they couldn't really stop themselves from checking the news, and then if it interfered with other aspects of their lives, if they were kind of finding themselves distracted while they're at work or school or when they're with their family. And so we kind of put those together as a composite measure to look at problematic news consumption. And what we found is those who were really high in problematic news consumption were much more likely to have indication of mental ill-being, just generalized stress and anxiety, not about the news specifically, but these tendencies to feel like they're in a panic and things of that nature, and also a lot more kind of physical ill-being. Our survey looked at was conducted in 2021. At that time, there was obviously a lot of attention on things like COVID, and it's certainly likely that a lot of people were experiencing heightened levels of stress and anxiety because of COVID. But there are other stories that probably caught people's attention. There are a lot of people that worried in the US about political developments on both sides of the aisle. So it's hard to say, is this something that we expect to find the exact same results all the time? But given the way things have gone recently in the news, we do kind of think that there's probably an increased level of anxiety and stress in relation to the news. We don't look at that directly, but we would kind of expect that things are just kind of, in terms of how people are feeling about the news and the stories that people are getting from the news, making people feel a little bit worse. In terms of what people can do if they do find that they have high levels of problematic news consumption, we think the first thing that people should do is just have awareness of it, right? Kind of pay attention to your habits. A lot of people kind of engage with the news habitually, right? They're getting on the phone without even thinking about it. It's not like, it's my time to check the news. I need to know what's going on. It's just kind of second nature for a lot of people. And these are kind of habits that maybe people do need to cut down on. If they're just kind of compulsively doing it when they're with their family or friends, then they're kind of tuned into their phone rather than kind of paying attention to their surroundings. People should kind of be aware of those habits and maybe try to cut back a little bit. We don't want people to stop watching the news completely. The news has a lot of important information. It's good for a society to have informed citizens. But when it becomes habitual, when it becomes all the time, that's probably a little too much. The other component of that is just being aware of how it affects you, right? If you feel stressed when you're checking the news, be aware of those feelings and kind of get a sense of how that's affecting you. And so just kind of bringing awareness to that should help people kind of understand how they relate to the news, and then maybe kind of think about better ways to do it. Another thing that we're suggesting is that kind of having a little bit more presence and mindfulness about the surroundings around you can help people. We think one of the biggest problems is people carry around all the stress and anxiety from the news all the time. When they're out and about in situations in which the news stories aren't directly kind of present for them, they're still thinking about it, right? And not paying attention to things that might otherwise bring them a little bit calmness, a little bit of happiness. So just kind of being a little bit more mindful in your day-to-day life might help people to disassociate a little bit so they're not always carrying around that stress.